532, you're assigned to a captain. Did you copy the special flag?
Start me a card for a parking problem.
911, what's your emergency?
Yeah, my next door neighbor broke into my house and stole my drugs.
911, what?
A fun, unique podcast taking you behind the badge. Unbelievable stories exploring the day in the life of a first responder. 911 is made possible by Carlos Bail Bonding and Eric Buchanan and Associates, fighting for those that have been denied disability, life, long-term care, and health benefits nationwide. Now, here's your host, DeMarlon Dean.
Welcome to 911 What? You know, the show where we talk about all the crazy stuff and calls that police officers, first responders have. And, you know, just talk about things that you wouldn't necessarily believe. But today, we're going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to talk to someone that actually has a story to tell, maybe from the other side or the other perspective of first responders. And my guest today is Mr. Erik Allen, and he has a wonderful journey about where he was and where he is. And I think the whole premise is your past does not have to define your future. So I've read a little bit about this gentleman, heard some of his other podcasts. We'll hear a little bit about that. But let's go ahead and hear from a sponsor or two, and we'll be right back and speak with Mr. Erik Allen.
Listen up, friends. Do you or someone that you know have disability insurance? I mean, the insurance that you buy through your employer in case you have an injury or an illness that prevents you from doing your job. And if you do have that insurance, good for you. Hopefully you'll never have to use it. But know this, if you do have an injury or illness and it prevents you from doing your job and you file that claim, the insurance company is going to do everything they can to try to deny that claim. And if you find yourself in that position, you need to call Erik Buchanan and Associates. That's right, Erik Buchanan and Associates, and put them to work for you. They will go to bat and fight to get you the benefits that you've paid for and that you deserve. You can call them at 877-634-2506. Again, that's 877-634-2506. Or you can find them online at buchanandisability.com. That's buchanandisability.com. Be sure and call those guys, Erik Buchanan and Associates. You won't be disappointed.
All right, welcome back to 911 What? Erik, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me on the show, man. Truly an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. I am so glad you took time to join me. It's been a while, a little scheduling conflict because we had one scheduled. It turns out it was the wrong day for me. But man, you are busy. And then you sent back, okay, I've got this day and another day in 2023. You pick. Which do you want to do? So tell us all about Erik Allen, what you've been up to, what's kind of going on now, and then we'll get a little bit into your backstory. But you've got podcasts and all kinds of stuff going on. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's true. So I have two podcasts. The Erik Allen Show drops every Friday, and that's where I talk with entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people. I've been blessed to speak with guys like Ed Milet and Tim Story, Brad Lee, Bedros Keuilian, Jim the Rookie Morris. And, it's just been a huge blessing to have that show. It actually started out as a show called The Bearded Biz, but my wife, being the smart one, said, I think you're niching down too much. People think they need to have a beard to come on your show. So I changed it to the Erik Allen Show.
Yeah, you do have a righteous beard, by the way. If you guys are watching this on video, this beard is, that's the way to do it. This is about all I can grow. And this is 53 years of trying to grow a beard.
Nice. Her being the smart one, we changed the name. And my other show is called the Top Rated MMA Show, and that's where I talk with up and coming MMA fighters from around the world. I'm not a fighter, but I love to hear their stories and really ask the question, like, why do you want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? And it was the same sort of thing goes for my entrepreneurship show. Is like I ask those guys the same question, like, why do you want to get punched in the face? Hopefully not physically, but why do we go through the no's and rejections and failures, but we keep going as entrepreneurs? And so that's really what my two podcasts are about. And I've been podcasting since 2017. I do voiceover, I do public speaking, I do, product and brand videos for brands and stuff like that, which is always fun when they send me free gear, mostly beard companies, of course. But, I love working with different brands and stuff like that. So, yeah. And then I've been on this podcast tour in 2021. My goal was to be a guest on 100 podcasts this year.
Wow. Now, why did somebody that has two successful podcasts on their own, why did you set a goal to be a guest on so many podcasts? Was it just to grow your own?
Yeah, it was crazy. So last year I said, I'm going to be a guest on 50 podcasts. And I only did like 26, I think. And then I was like, well, that's really low. So I went into this year thinking I'm going to do 100 and just not stop. And so really it was just to kind of connect with other podcasters. I love meeting other people who are doing podcasting. I'm fascinated with people's stories. So even when I'm a guest on other people's shows, I still get to know these people, and it turns into just amazing friendships. And so really that was my goal, was to just get on 100 podcasts. By the way, this is the 94th interview I've done this year.
Yes.
So we're getting close there.
Awesome.
It's just been fun. And I love being able to do that. Next year, we'll probably slow it down a little bit, but I just really wanted to get my story out, try to impact as many people as I could, and really just get to know as many people as I could this year.
Good. Well, you have a great story. Let's go ahead and talk about that, because, people could hear your story and there's thousands of stories like yours, or at least that started like yours, but not all of them ended like yours. So tell us, your story and kind of why we're here, and then we'll dig into that a bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in what I thought was a typical household, Sunday school, little league, things like that. My parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. I'd never heard that word before. Didn't have any friends that were, whose parents were divorced. And so it was kind of a shock to the system, I think. And my mom got together with a guy who was very physically abusive almost immediately, that I remember. Mm-hmm. And I remember there would be times where they would be arguing and I'd be outside looking through their bedroom window and he'd be hitting her with a cordless phone. I mean, when those were around, it was just the weirdest thing to me that my mom decided to hang around this guy. And so she did the smart thing. They got pregnant and they ended up moving us to Stevensville, Montana. I grew up in Eastern Washington State, and they moved us to Stevensville, Montana, which population 1,200. And they rented this house on 5 acres, this beautiful property, ponds and deer, all over the property. And we were right by the Bitterroot River. Mm-hmm. And this house had 3 bedrooms. It was one for them, one for my brother, who's just a few months old at the time, or my half brother there. And then my sister. And they said, Eric, you get to live in the garage. I literally had this black tarp that separated my bed from the truck that pulled in. And I had a fireplace on my half of the garage, but it would keep me semi-warm through the middle of the night when it was negative degrees outside. So it was kind of an interesting setup that I had. I did have my own TV, and I played Nintendo out there to try to escape the craziness that was going on. Mm-hmm. One night they came home arguing. I was 13 years old, and it wasn't really anything different than any other night. I just, kind of ignored it. But I was brushing my teeth, and I felt in that moment the guy was like, dude, you got to turn around. You got to see what's going on. And so I turn around, and I see him on top of my mom in the pantry area. So the way the house was set up was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage door where I live. Mm-hmm. And so he's on top of my mom, one punch after the other, just boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, dude, I got to get this guy off. And so I walked up behind him and I grabbed a cast iron pan and I swung as hard as I could, and I split the back of his head open.
Oh, wow.
And he turned around and he didn't get knocked out. He said, what then? As he said that, I took another swing and split his forehead open.
Man.
And I fell over. I hit him so hard the second time I actually fell over. And I remember him standing up over me in that moment, and he was bleeding down his face and he was starting to yell. My mom jumps up, lands like 6 punches in a row to the face, blood splatting on the wall. Cops finally show up because, they're ways away where we were at in that town. And they took him to jail for the night. My mom never pressed charges. And then I was actually kicked out of the house at that point.
So you got kicked out of the house. He's beating on your mom, and then you get kicked out of the house.
That's true. Yes.
Man. So where do you go at 13? This is at 13, right?
Yeah, I was 13. I was just a freshman in high school, and I had 3 months left or so of my school year. And luckily I had some really nice friends. They said, hey, you can come stay on our floor here. And I stayed there for a couple months. And, my buddy, his name was Forrest, and he lived with his single dad. And I stayed with them for a couple months and to finish out the school year. And then after that, I moved back to live with my dad out in Washington. But that moment, that event really kind of sent me on this path of destruction for the next 10 years of my life.
Wow. So let's back up and talk about that a little bit. So
yeah,
your mother, she gets divorced and immediately or soon attaches to a guy that's abusive. Did she have a pattern of being with abusive people before that? I mean, like, was your father abusive? And if I ask something that's too personal, just say, shut up.
No, you're good. No, my mom and my dad actually met each other when they were in junior high. So they were kind of like junior high and high school sweethearts. So they knew each other, basically all their lives. Mm-hmm. And my dad, I never saw my dad fight with her. I never saw him physically touch her ever. In fact, I don't remember my parents really arguing that much. Mm-hmm. I know that when I was a kid, my dad did have a drinking problem. Like I would find bottles of vodka out in the garage,
Okay.
or half drink bottles of vodka in the garage. But I never saw him get abusive with my mom or anything like that. My dad was kind of the guy that would just kind of be quiet and shut down when he would, be drinking.
Yeah.
And so I never really saw that as a problem at that age. But now looking back, I can definitely see that there were some issues. And that might have been the cause of the divorce. I don't know. But it was just a weird thing. I think that as far as I know, that was the first encounter that my mom had with really a physical abusive, person in her life.
Wow. So they have a child together. Was there any, before you got moved to the garage, was there any jealousy or resentment, would you say, of the other child that was now in the family?
Jealousy for me?
Yeah, like that now your mom and this other person have a son together that's, and I'd imagine a lot of attention is being shifted that way, and it's not, your full brother kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I've never been asked that before. I don't know if there was. I think I was still kind of in shock throughout the time. And, I moved out when he was like, he was maybe a year old or 2 old, maybe 2 years old by the time I moved out. So I didn't really get to spend that much time with him at that time. And, but yeah, maybe a little bit, but I enjoyed kind of being outside. I think, just the whole environment of that man being in our house. I was like, dude, I don't even want to be in here. If my mom's going to choose to stay here through all this crap that they're dealing with, like, I just want to be outside and play Nintendo, doing my homework and stuff like that. Like, and so I don't know, maybe there was, but I guess looking back, I don't know if there was. Maybe not too much, a little bit.
Yeah, well, it does. If there wasn't, that's fine. I was just curious because I imagine putting myself in that position where, now because you have a sister, right? That was your full sister, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a full
so you
sister.
have these,
She's
these
4
two
years
people,
younger than me.
okay, that grew up together. Y'all are together now. You have a third person that's brought in, and sometimes you have jealousy when there's a new child that's just your full sibling. And then you get sent to the garage, and I can just kind of imagine what I'd be feeling if he gets a room, she gets a room. Well, that's my sister, I get it, but you gonna put me in the garage?
Yeah,
like, nah.
It was strange, man. It was strange.
Yeah.
And a very, very interesting story. So when my mom and dad, when I was born, December 11th, and my mom and dad actually had a baby girl that was born December 11th, a year before I was born, that died 4 days after. So it was just really weird. I don't know if that had any effect to do with my parents getting divorced or any of that, but it was just this weird kind of dynamic, I think, that my parents maybe had. I was treated much different than my sister. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it or anything like that. So it could have been something like that as well.
So next 10 years, you said you sat out on a path of destruction. Is that how you described it, or just a path of just bad decisions? Let's talk about that.
I think a lot of bad decisions, a lot of destruction. So I moved back to live with my dad back in Washington for my sophomore through senior year of high school. And he rented a house for us. He'd put $20 in the cup for lunch money. That was my lunch money for the week. And then Hungry Man meals in the freezer and cereal milk in the house. And then basically paid all the bills, but then he would go stay with his girlfriend.
Okay.
And so I would see my dad in passing a couple times a month.
Oh, wow.
It was up to me to, get to school, do my homework, get all that done. No accountability, no adult supervision. So I was getting stoned before school. I was getting stoned at school. During lunch, I was getting stoned after school. Started taking acid and mushrooms and, really whatever I could get my hands on. I was going to the store even to buy cough syrup because it had dextromorphine in it. It cost half the price of a hit of acid. Just really making some poor decisions. And then when I was 18 years old, I was a senior in high school and got arrested for having a bong, which is now legal in the state of Washington. But at the time, it wasn't in 1998. And I had to go to jail. I had a black and white chain gang outfit on, bright orange slippers. I weighed like 145 pounds, like super scared white dude going into, jail. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And had to spend, luckily it was just 24 hours, but it was enough to scare me.
Okay.
Not enough to scare me to get sober because I was on a year of probation after that where could have gotten drug tested, never did, but basically I had to check in with my probation officer for a year. And so what I did was I shifted that drug use to alcohol. So I started drinking really heavily at that point. And 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I woke up to a Post-it note on the bathroom mirror that said, "You can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out."
And now you've been kicked out of your mom's home, and I apologize for the dogs. Apparently somebody is at the door, if you could hear them.
No, it's no big deal.
Your mom's home at 13, and you kind of couch surf for a while. And now, you're in your dad's home, or he's paying the bills. You guys don't really have a relationship, and you get a notice 48 hours, you got to be gone.
Yep.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was interesting because that kind of sent me on like, okay, now I got to man up. I got to start paying the bills. I got to figure out how to do this. So I started working, but I could never keep a job full time for a long time. You know, I was just bouncing around from job to job. I was bouncing around from place to place. And, you know, between the age of 18 and 21, I moved 21 times. And I moved up to Seattle. I had $100 in my pocket.
Wow.
And was, again, just kind of couch surfing wherever I could until I could get my feet on the ground and basically living off of credit cards. So by the time I'm 21, I'm $28,000 in debt and had to file bankruptcy.
Man. And you would be what people on the outside looking in would probably call you a bad kid.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you have considered yourself a bad kid?
I mean, my heart was there, but yeah, for sure. I made a lot of bad decisions. You know, I got to give credit to my best friend, Dave. I met him in first grade. And still to this day, he's my best friend. So 36 years now we've been friends. And his family really took me in when my parents got divorced. He lived up the street from me. And there was times where I was this party animal. I was making a lot of bad decisions in high school. My buddy Dave, probably one of the greatest dudes ever, you know, took me in anytime I needed to. But there was times where, you know, I had a conversation with his parents and they'd be like, we almost had to tell Dave to not hang out with you anymore because we saw the destruction that you were going down this path, but we didn't want to give up on you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. Thank you so much for not giving up on me, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference.
They're still my family today. They're probably, you know, my closest family.
That's awesome. And that's the difference. I think, you know, you described something that a lot of our children go through. And the difference is they have someone, whether it's parents or whatever, that cares enough to try. And, and from the outside looking in, if you didn't grow up with that life, you know, you just see a bad kid. And, you know, you go on and we'll talk a little bit about how you changed all of that, but you go on to show that you weren't necessarily a bad kid. You were definitely making some bad decisions.
Yeah.
But let's look at what you had to go through before you started making those decisions. So at 13, before you had to take a cast iron skillet to your stepfather's head because he was beating your mom, would you have considered yourself a bad kid then before 13?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I never did.
Yeah.
I was kind of a loner kid who just kind of liked to play video games.
Yeah. So you're just a normal kid, likes to play video games, and you're having to sit through and watch horrific abuse of your mother.
Yeah.
And that caused you to take action to protect your mother, which caused you to get kicked out of your home. What was your home?
Yep.
And now you start making decisions out of whatever, you know, you have this hole, you have this void, you're angry. I mean, who wouldn't be at 13 years old and get out of my house?
Yep.
And so I guess my challenge to those that are listening today is show compassion. You know, not everybody that makes bad decisions, even repeated bad decisions, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are bad people. Now, I'm not saying everybody gets a pass and you're not responsible for your actions. You will never hear me say that.
Yeah.
But take a little time to ask somebody, hey man, why are you making that decision? I quick story. Just last week I was in New York with my son for his 16th birthday, and he's been wanting to he went about 3 years ago, he and my other son, and ever since we got back, that's all that my son's been talking about. Go back to New York. When can we go back to New York? Didn't ask for anything else for his birthday. He didn't ask for that. He just kept saying, when can we go? I want to go. So his mom and I said, hey, let's make this happen. We'll each pay half and we go to New York. So anyway, fast forward, we're in Times Square. We're walking down 42nd Street. And we hear this crash, which I immediately, as a former police officer, recognized as a wreck. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. And I turn around, and what I see were two cars, and someone from one car, the front car, at the second car, just throwing haymakers in the door, just beating the crap out of this guy that's sitting in his car. And I'm like, that ain't right. And of course, everybody in today's time, they're pulling out their phones. Nobody's helping. They're all pulling out their phones and videotaping. So I'm going back towards the scene, and I'm thinking through my head, do I step in here and try to break this up because this guy was much bigger than I was, or, you know, what do I do? But what's happening is not right. And fortunately, there's so many officers in Times Square. They get there, they stop it, and they break it up. And everybody's like, yeah, man, can you believe that? I can't believe that guy's out there beating him. And me too. I'm like, dude, it's an accident. He ran into your car. This is what I'm thinking to myself. This guy ran into your car. It's an accident. And you're out here wailing on him. You can't do that. That's just not right. So I made a decision based on what I saw, that this guy was just a jerk. But then I says, well, wait a minute. what's the rest of the story? So I actually did go over there once he calmed down a little bit. I said, dude, what's up? Why did you do that?
Yeah.
You can't do that. That's not right. He said, no, man, this guy hit me about a block ago and he's trying to get away. And he said, I got my 1-year-old child in the car and he rocks my car and I don't know if my child's injured and there is no way I'm letting this guy get away. So, I run in front of him and to stop him, what he did was he threw his car reverse and rammed back into him and smashed the guy that originally hit him and then commenced to wailing on him, which is still not right. But there was a lot more to the story once I went and actually took the time to just ask him, hey, what's going on here? And the rest of the story is he said, he said, I just separated from, my baby's mom. And here is the baby's mom with me. And how am I going to go back to her and say, I'm sorry, our baby's hurt. This guy hit me and I don't know who he is and got away. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I had to stop this guy. So there's always more to the story. And we should take time if we really care, instead of just putting out, accusations, making judgments. Let's find out, Again, I don't think what he did was right. But there was certainly more to the story. I could at least understand why he'd be so angry that he wanted to go hit a guy. Because to me, it's an accident. There's no cause for that at all. So I think bringing that full circle, looking at someone in your situation at 18 years old, a lot of people would just say, man, this Erik kid, this dude's trouble. There's no hope for him and could have given up on you. But fortunately, a couple of things happened. You had a family that didn't give up on you. And then I'll let you turn or go ahead and tell us maybe what that moment was or what changed for you that changed your trajectory from where you were to where you are.
Yeah, it was an interesting situation because after I filed bankruptcy, I actually ended up getting a job in the music business, and it was always a dream of mine to get in the music business. I don't know how to play anything, but I was interested in the sales and marketing side and landed an internship with Universal Records. I just showed up every day for 6 months, and then they're like, all right, we're just going to start paying this guy. So I finally got paid to be the mailroom guy, and I was there for about a year, and then Napster came and killed the music industry, and I was at the bottom of the totem pole, so I got let go along with half the office. But that sent me into this depression because I spent, a year in the music business. I spent a year managing a band prior to that. So I had this 2-year span where I went to about 175 concerts over 2 years. And I never paid for a drink over the 2 years. I had open tab every time I went to a concert and lived this rock star lifestyle without being a rock star. And when I got let go, I was kind of like, well, now what? Like, I didn't have any friends. I was working. I lived in this really dirty apartment across the street from where Jimi Hendrix is buried out in Renton, Washington.
Oh, wow.
And, it's like, that was the cool part about being this like really dirty ghetto apartment that I lived in, right? But I could go across the street and see Jimmy. But I worked at the Starbucks at night, and I would get off work and I'd go to Safeway and get a 6-pack of beer, and I'd go to Hollywood Video and rent a movie and go to my apartment and drink myself to sleep every night. And one night this girl walked in to Starbucks who doesn't drink coffee and said, hey, we've got this cool college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going? And I was alone. I was depressed. I had no friends, and she's really good looking. Absolutely. What time do I need to be there? That was what was going through my mind, And so I went down there, and it was all of a sudden like God opened up these doors. Like I saw these guys that I hadn't seen since high school or, in while I was in college for a short stint, like, man, I haven't seen you in 5 years. I haven't seen you in 7 years. So it was just really cool time to connect with guys. And I think God was planting a seed in that moment, because about a month later, I was managing this band. We were out playing a concert the night before Easter. And I woke up Easter morning, 2004, surrounded by a bunch of buddies that were all passed out in my buddy's basement. And I woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I felt in that moment that God was saying, dude, you're going down this path that's going to end your life very quickly if you don't start making some changes. And so I decided in that moment, I gave my life to Christ right there in my buddy's basement. I just decided I was going to quit, and I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment.
Hey, man, that's awesome.
And I called that girl up. I got her voicemail and said, hey, thanks for inviting me to that church event. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime. And a month later, we're dating. A year later, we're married. And now we've been married for almost 17 years.
17 years, man. That is an amazing story. There's so much there to unpack. I mean, I think I heard you early on say that you grew up in what you thought was a normal life. You went to church, so seeds were planted then, and then all this time goes by where you're lost and you feel the destruction, but then you hit a moment where God's reaching out to you and saying, hey, here I am. I have something better for you.
Yep.
And you made the choice, that's one of those pivotal moments. You made the choice to listen to that call and answer that call. And many of us hear that, we know there's something else. We know there's something more, but we don't want to surrender. And so we keep trying to make it and do it our own way and, end up not getting the results. So you surrendered. And because of that, I think he said God opened up all kinds of doors. You have a beautiful wife, 17 years. And how many children? 2?
We have 2 kids.
2 beautiful children.
Yep. My kids are 11 and 8. And, when we got married, we both came from kind of the craziness of homes. And, she came from a broken home as well. Not quite as crazy, but different crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so we knew exactly what we didn't want in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But we also brought in a lot of junk that we had to kind of work through. So we spent the first 5 years really just kind of getting to know each other and work through that stuff. I ended up going to counseling, in our early marriage years to kind of figure out why was I so angry about life? And, I was this defensive guy and I'd never been to a counselor before. I thought it was just foofy stuff, and then I went and I was like, oh my gosh, this totally helps, man. Like, it was like eye-opening for me to go. And, my wife and I, we went down to Mexico. We built homes twice for people down there. And that, literally over a weekend, we build a home. They get from dirt floor to a house over a weekend. And it's the greatest thing ever to be a part of that. And, all of us are just booger crying at the end of the day,
That's awesome.
handing these keys to this family. And, so we did that stuff. We did a lot of campings. We just got to know each other. And, ironically enough, my wife and I are actually both born at exactly the same minute.
What?
On our birth certificates. It's 1:41 p.m. for both of us. Different days, different years, but the exact same minute on our birth certificate. So, it's just funny how God works.
That is so cool. Yeah, I'll tell you why you're bitter and defensive. Let's see. 13 years old, you get kicked out of your house and your mom's getting beat by this dude. That's why.
Right.
So man, but even in that, I think so many of us, we look at our past and we let it determine our future. So you could have stayed in that anger and that bitterness because you could have felt justified in that, but you chose to, again, surrender to God, let God use you and also use tools that are available, talk to professionals and start working through those things because statistically speaking, you get, well, even if you come from a decent family, statistically speaking, half of marriages end in divorce, but even more so when you bring that baggage with you, because that's what and you see people will make a choice, they either, they don't want a family because they don't want to even take the chance of what happened to them growing up happening to their family, and they just run away from it. Or you do have the ones that are successful as you've been, and you learn from that. And yes, you recognize that and you work really, really hard to make sure you don't go down that path.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think once I realized that my past and other people's opinions don't define my future, that's when it was like, okay.
So when was that?
Now we know what we can do.
Do you remember kind of when that happened? Yeah. Breaking when you start realizing, and there may not be a specific moment when you think, you know what, that just doesn't matter, but that's huge. I've heard this saying now, and it's basically what you're saying. What other people think of you is none of your business. Right. Who cares? They can't define you. But was there a time when you're like, you know what, I don't care anymore. What they think doesn't matter.
There really was. So, when I decided to give my life to Christ, I called all my buddies up that I was partying with. I was managing a band, and I said, hey guys, for me, I got to get healthy. I got to get sober. And so they all understood. They're like, dude, you got to get healthy. Go, do what you got to do. And I took like 6 months away from hanging out with them, 6 months away from going to the bars or anything like that. And those guys are still my friends today. But like, I basically took this time to really get to know the Lord. And I started, without realizing it, I was kind of interviewing people from the church. Like, I found guys that were living the life that I wanted to live. So they had great marriages. They had great businesses. They were very close in their walk with Christ. And I would take them out to coffee and say, man, tell me your story. How do I get to where you're at?
Man.
And I started soaking up as much as I could. I was reading books like crazy. I'd never read books prior to that. And I was like reading a book a week, and I was just like on fire. I was like, man, I want to have this heart on fire for the Lord. And it was in that time, probably within the first 30 days, that I was like, I'm breaking those cycles.
Mm-hmm.
My past does not define me. I can make a change. I can change the legacy for my family. The Allen tribe moving forward will never experience divorce, will never experience abuse or rejection. And we just decided, when we said I do, we meant it. We're not going to, we've had some ups and downs throughout our marriage, but we we've been able to work through that mess and be able to work through the craziness that we've experienced. And we've moved cross states, and we've done a couple 13-hour U-Haul drives trying to move and stuff like that. And so we've just done some really cool experiences, but we just knew that when we said I do, we meant it, and there wasn't going to be any breaking of the chain that we were putting together.
That is awesome. Yeah, if you were to sit here and tell me, yeah, we've been together 16, 17 years and it's been perfect, we hadn't had any disagreements, I would stop this podcast right now and call you a liar.
Yeah, never. Always ups and downs. And that's the funny thing with kids is, they'll see us argue. They'll see us make up. They'll see me kiss my wife in the kitchen. They'll see me slow dance with my wife, and they'll go, ooh, and I'm like, hey, you just wait, but like, this is what we'll do. And what this is how we come together as a family. We're not going to always agree on things. We're not always going to be on the same page. We're always not going to, some of us might be grumpy, cause I didn't eat food today. Right. Like, that type of stuff, but we can all come back to, what, this is the family. This is our solid family, and nothing's going to break us up.
That's awesome. I think that's very important. I think that's one of the mistakes a lot of couples make. And I've been guilty of it as well. You have a disagreement and you try to hide it. And you try to, you don't want to discuss it or argue or anything in front of the kids. Sometimes you end up doing it anyway, but they don't see the making up. They don't see that, you get to the other side, and they don't learn that it's okay to disagree. There's still a proper way to do it, but that's also normal. That's natural. It's going to happen, but you have to come together and figure out how do we come to a place where we can agree and move forward. So that's extremely healthy. Yeah. So I give you kudos on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
It sounds like you actually took an approach to defining your future as it relates to your faith and God, just like a business mentor would tell you. If you want to build a business, if you want something, you find people that have that, and you surround yourself with those people and take them to coffee. So you did that same. You did a business approach to getting your life together on a personal level, a faith level, not necessarily a business level, but now you're actually doing that with podcasts and stuff. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it's so important to surround yourself with the right people that are going to lift you up. And I don't mean that like in a kiss butt type way, but like if you hang around people that are living the life that you want to live, just being in their presence is going to motivate you to be a better person. Never be the smartest guy or smartest girl in the room, right? Like always go find people that are living that life and really just soak up as much time as you can with them. And, I still, to this day, if, people are coming into town, I'm like, dude, let me take you out for coffee. Let me go grab a burger with you. I love to get out of my comfort zone and kind of put myself out there for people that are living that life, that I want to live. Ed Milet, I found out that he lived here in Coeur d'Alene, and the first time that I interacted with him, I sent him a message on Instagram Messenger. I said, hey man, I see you live in Coeur d'Alene. I live out in Coeur d'Alene. Next time you're in town, let me buy a burger.
Mm-hmm.
And then he responded like, heck yeah, let's do it. And I was like, what? And I still haven't got that burger for him, but I was able to talk with him on Zoom for about 30 minutes after I won the Max Out Challenge that he issued a couple of years back. And it was a life-changing call for me.
Man, and what's the Max Out Challenge?
So he only did it once. And basically he said, hey, I want everybody that, if you're interested, I want you to submit a 1-minute story to me through Instagram of what you're passionate about, what drives you. Why do you want to be successful in life and in your business? And I'd never really done anything like that before. I just recorded myself on my phone for 1 minute and I just sent it. And it was like, all of a sudden, people, he was announcing these guys, oh, this is a top runner. And like 2 months in, he announced me and then this other place called a Camp Agape out in California. We're the two winners. So we both won phone calls with Ed. It was supposed to be 20 minutes for me. And we ended up talking for 30 minutes. I was able to record that and then release that as an episode of my show really early on. It was episode 12. And that, of course, opened up a ton of doors because prior to that, I had Sean Whalen. And then I was able to get Tim Story and Brad Lee and all these guys on the show. And now we're 120 episodes in on that show. And my other shows have 240 episodes in. And so we're just going to continue to go strong.
Man, so what would someone pay for 30 minutes to talk with that guy and pick his brain? I mean, that is, wow. That's great.
It was pretty unbelievable. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he charges quite a bit of money. I know that for sure.
That's great.
But it was definitely an honor. And I love that I came across him by accident on YouTube and I just felt like he was really talking to me. And I was like, just really soaked in on like, I'm going to watch every video this guy's ever put out. And then when I won that challenge and I got to have a phone call with him, he was like, shut everything out. He just wanted to focus on me. He wanted to know what I was doing, how he can help me. Like, he introduced me to people here in town. Like, I know about half the people in town that are, wealthy, that can help you out and stuff like that. So let me introduce you to those guys. Like, he opened up so many doors from that one phone call. It was unbelievable.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, this is a great time for me to kind of get one of our sponsors in. I want to go back to when you were 18 and when you were arrested. Cool. Did you fight the police?
I did not.
You didn't fight the police?
So I actually ended up going to court first. And I'd never been in a courtroom before. I wore a shirt and a tie. And I get in there, and the first thing out of the judge's mouth was, tell me a reason why I shouldn't throw you in jail for 90 days. And I'm like, what? And I stuttered. I was like, and he said, I'll give you a reason. Your mother loves you. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, I don't know about that.
I don't know if you're right on that, but okay.
Right. Yeah. So, and he kind of went back and forth, and he said, okay, we'll do $220 in fines. And then you have to take an alcohol class. And then you got 89 or 90 days jail time, 89 suspended. And he said, can you come to jail on Saturday? And I said, raised my hand, and I said, is there any way that I can come to jail on Friday? And he said, what? And I said, well, it's homecoming on Saturday, and my girlfriend's already got a dress. And he laughed, and he said, well, your girlfriend probably should have thought about that. She probably picked the wrong guy to go to the dance with. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And he said, okay, I'll see you at Friday, 2:00.
Wow.
So I skipped school on Friday. I wrote a note to my dad in the morning, and I said, hey, I'm staying at Danny's house. I'll be back tomorrow, because I knew I was only going for 24 hours. My dad never called. So I just skipped school, went straight to the jail, and I checked myself in. I was able to bring my Bible. Wasn't like going to church or wasn't walking with Christ at the time, but I thought, if I bring this Bible, I'll be safe.
That's weird. I would have felt like, if I bring this Bible,
chain,
somebody's going to beat me up.
I know. I was definitely the youngest guy in there. There's probably 14 people in this cell block. And luckily my cell with the double bunks, there was not enough guys to fill that. So I had my own cell to myself. I don't know that I slept through the night, but it was quite interesting, to experience that. And, I got out and I was like, okay. And I literally drove back to pick up my tux on the night of the dance. And the tuck shop was closed. So my girlfriend's like, get over here. I already picked it up, So it was just it turned into an interesting weekend for sure.
It sounds like it. You actually were protected by the word, literally, when you went to jail. But
totally.
But my point is, if you find yourself in a situation like Mr. Erik Allen and you're being faced with arrest, you don't fight. You don't fight with the police. No. You just go ahead, you take your ride, spend the night in jail if you have to, but call Carlos bail bonding and let him get you out. Just call Carlos at 423-475-6383. Take a note from Erik Allen. Don't fight. Go and fight in court where you actually can be heard and nobody's in jeopardy of getting killed or hurt or anything. Call Carlos bail bonding, 423-475-6383. And of course, if you're unfortunate enough to be in jail, just look for Carlos. His number will be down there. And if you want to, you have somebody maybe that needs his services now, you can also check him out online at bailbondsmanchattanooga.com. Again, Carlos bail bonding. So, I just thought that was a perfect time to talk about them. And we see all these situations where people are like, you don't have a right to stop me. And officer may be wrong. Officer is not always right, but he's still always the officer and always the authority. So don't do it. It's not worth it. So what's next for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this year was all about kind of getting on the shows and really making an impact. Continue to do my shows. Next year, I'm going to relaunch my coaching program, and I have a brand new website coming out soon. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to be working with more high ticket sales. I'll do some more coaching programs. So I coach early podcasters and people thinking about getting into podcasting on how to do it.
Okay.
How to connect with the big names. Where should you host it? How do you market yourself? Like things like that. And just like I struggled. I just YouTubed everything, and it took me years to really get it down. And now what I do is I coach people in that over a 30-day period and say, hey, here we go. Let's make this happen. And let's help you get ranked on Apple and things like that. And I share all those tips with them. So I'm going to be really focusing on that going into the next year, really trying to just make an impact in public speaking and more voiceover work and really just coaching folks going into 2022.
Very, very, very cool. So tell people if they want to check out your podcast, tell them where they can find it, the names of them again, and what each of them are about, and then your website, all of that stuff. Go ahead. This is your time now to promote you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, erikallenmedia.com is the website. It's ErikAllen. And then obviously erikallenmedia.com. I'm on Instagram, which is just Erik G. Allen. And I love connecting with people on Instagram. I respond to every comment and every DM. And my 2 podcasts, the Erik Allen Show, it drops every single Friday. And then the Top Rated MMA Show drops every single Saturday. And both of those shows really focus on up and coming entrepreneurs. And some of them are bigger names like Ed Milet and Ken Shamrock and stuff like that. But I love just hearing the stories of people. I ask the same question on both. Mm-hmm. Tell me about where you grew up and what was childhood like for you? Because I want people to realize that the guests that I have on my show, they're normal people that went through some crazy stuff that got to where they're at, and they made a decision to change, and then they took action to make that happen. So that's what both of my shows focus on, that sort of things. But yeah, it's such an honor to be here, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Man, thank you. So one last question. Do you like being the podcaster or the podcastee?
You know, it has its both are fun. I love being on other podcasts. I love chatting with new podcasters. I love to see how they do things and go, man, I could tweak my show like that. So I love that aspect of it. I also love not having to edit my own show when I'm a guest on a show. So because I do all that work myself, but you know, I think it's fun to interview people as well. So I enjoy the research process. Yeah. I enjoy kind of deep diving in and trying to figure out questions that people probably hopefully aren't going to get asked on every podcast that they're on. So, you know, I don't know which I like best. I really enjoy both all the way around, just getting to know new people and especially those in the podcast community, because they understand the craziness that I am. You know, I get up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week to work on my podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, I understand that. You know,
man. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go away just yet. I need to chat with you after the fact, but I really appreciate you joining us, and thank all of you all for listening. Be sure to, you know, if you're on Apple, make sure you give us a good rating, and whatever you're listening on, be sure to subscribe so you know when the next episodes are coming out. But I thank you so much, Erik. I thank you for being here. And until next time, everyone have a blessed day.
Thanks for listening to 911 What? We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have comments or suggestions, please email us at 911what.podcast@gmail.com. And thanks to Carlos Bail Bonding and Eric Buchanan and Associates for making this episode possible.